future of the restaurant industry is going to depend on a few key elements that are starting to develop as kind of the breaking area of where maybe the food service industry is going. We're going to get a chance to talk about that today. My name is Paul Barron, and this is the Barron Report. We're going to jump into something probably most of you have heard about. Maybe you're even doing one of these, and that is a ghost kitchen or virtual brand. Our experts today are coming from an unusual place. I won't say it unusual, but a different place in the food industry versus operators as it goes. And with me today, I've got Jim Osborne, who is the U.S. Foods Senior Vice President of Customer Strategy and Innovation, and also sitting in Adam Stinn, who is the Director of Business Solutions. Great to have you guys on the show.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. I want to just kind of open up with a little bit about how U.S. Foods, who is predominantly a distributor for foods in supply chain, you guys, of course, one of the biggest and best in the industry, kind of what took you guys into the next step in terms of developing ghost kitchens and kind of this virtual brand component and direction? Can you guys kind of share that with our audience here?
Sure. As you said, we may come at it from a bit of an unusual place, but to us, it was really second nature. We're one of America's great food distributors, great food companies with over 300,000 customers all across the country and all different types of food operations. And a few years ago, we set out our promise to be, we help you make it. And we help you make it really means a couple of things. It means we help you make it from a food perspective, but we also help you make it from a business perspective. And so we've really set a strategy around helping our customers be successful, helping them with their food, helping them with their technology, helping them with their operations. We've got a team support structure that really focuses on restaurant success. So a lot of this has been in place for many, many years. And then in March, when the pandemic took hold, it really kind of pulled into action all of the things that we've been practicing for years. Making sure that we're helping our customers understand what they need to do to get into the off-premise game if they weren't there already, understanding how technology can help them from an ordering perspective, how to pivot their business model, how to rethink their P&L. Those are all things that we've been helping customers with for years, and it's never been more important than it has been over the last 7 months.
Yeah, and I think, with ghost kitchens, that's kind of been the, pretty much the hot word of the year. It seems like, at least in the food service industry, virtual brands have started to really expand quite a bit. We've seen brands who are now using transportable methods of placing brands within other restaurants and enabling them to sell their services or their products. All right, so let's kind of drill down into the ghost kitchen component in terms of how many and what operations you guys have standing today. Talk to me a little bit about what these look like for people who maybe have not seen one of these. You want to jump in there?
So maybe I'll start and then hand it over to Adam. What I would say is we're not in the real estate game for ghost kitchens. What we're looking at is the hundreds of thousands of independent restaurants primarily that they're already paying rent. They've already got inventory, they've already got labor, and they've got capacity on their hands. So how can we help enable those customers to get more revenue through their fixed cost structure without a lot of risk or a lot of upfront investment? And what we've done is we've really put together a playbook that helps them go from inspiration all the way through to execution that they can pick and choose as much as they want to help them be successful. We've got a team of experts, of restaurant operation consultants and food fanatic chefs that have really been at the centerpiece for the last 7 months in running webinars, in doing direct one-on-one consultations with customers. So that's really where it starts, is a customer or anybody in the industry, quite frankly, can jump on one of the webinars and learn more about how this can benefit their business, what to think about, what are the key areas to understand. And then they can engage directly with a food fanatic chef or a restaurant operation consultant, or a ROC, as we call them, to get into the details and start applying it to their situation and their scenario.
Adam, when you look at kind of the business development side of it, what does it take to kind of bring these people on? What's kind of the ramp up speed? What do you guys go out with in terms of a package to kind of get operators moving in this direction?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that the speed is going to be dependent a lot on the operator. But we've kind of designed this to be executed very quick. We have some good partners, and all of our internal resources are prepared to help operators come on board. But we've developed it in such a manner that it really kind of breaks down in three stages. We've got them how they stand up a brand, and this is looking at best practices for
Right.
social media, for developing a brand and activating, if you will, and creating that brand equity out in the market. And then the next module is really what we call optimizing their menu. And what we do here is we make sure they understand, hey, what does good look like? What does it take to be profitable? Is there appropriate white space around them to be successful? And then we help them forecast orders and turn the whole thing on in a relatively painless manner. So in terms of speed, a lot of it depends on the operator. But if somebody's fully engaged and wants to stand one of these up, we've seen it done in as little as 3 weeks.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let's talk investment from an operator who's out there. I've got a little excess capacity. What am I dealing with US Foods in terms of how much outlay do I have to do to maybe launch a ghost restaurant?
What I would say was it's going to depend on the size of the operation. But one of the things we developed was a cross-utilization tool, which allows operators to take an evaluation of what they're currently doing in a brick and mortar if they happen to operate a brick and mortar, and drilling into one of the menus that we've developed and saying, hey, what makes the most sense around you, but then also what makes the most sense on what you're currently buying. And that's really to help lower that risk to entry and potentially the cost that could be associated with standing one of these up. So keeping that in mind, another great thing that our restaurant operations consultants will do is sit down with the operator and actually go through that P&L and determine what makes sense, what's break even, what's good, how much does this cost, and how do you want to execute this and make sure you're successful.
Are you guys bringing any research to the table in terms of helping, say, an operator establish, listen, I'm an Italian concept. I'm not open during the day for lunch, but I have an evening business, but my lunch capacity could be here if I switched or flipped my menu a little bit, but I don't really know what that lunch crowd looks like. Are you guys bringing any kind of data to the table that kind of helps that process along?
Jim, you want to take that one, or you want me to?
No, go ahead, Adam. That's both
so
of us
the
are
answer is
chomping to answer that question. Yes.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. We have a partner that, and what we do before we ever get into what we're calling the playbook, before we ever sit down and start to build that brand, we take a look at what's around them. We help them understand the demographics.
Right.
We help them understand if there is any white space and opportunity around them. So yes, the short answer is yes. We definitely help them understand their market, what's around them, who's dining out the most at lunch, and do everything in our power to identify that best segment that's going to make them successful.
Yeah, very cool. So you've got data, you've got a supply chain there. Let's move on to kind of the branding component for ghost kitchens. That's been one of the pitfalls, I think, for a lot of operators. Is either one, they don't, they've been an expert at marketing their restaurant for years. So moving into a new brand is really, might as well just be starting up a new restaurant. So you've got marketing costs, and even today, marketing understanding, because you're probably dealing with maybe even a little different demographic. How far are you guys going into that side of it, whether it's content, social media, those kind of strategies that help a restaurant launch in a ghost format?
I think so. Whether it's a full ghost kitchen or whether it's a brand extension or a pivot off their existing brand, one of the big benefits that we have is these restaurant operation consultants and food fanatic chefs that sit down with an operator, whether virtually or in person, and help understand their scenario and what are the pros and cons to both. As we go through the playbook, it really becomes a color by numbers in terms of how to stand up an online presence, how to stand up online ordering, what it takes to run a social media campaign, what it needs to, just because you put a ghost kitchen up, it doesn't mean that, customers will just start flooding in. You've really got to understand the marketing piece. And I think that becomes a core part that we can really help with that is different for an independent restaurant than a chain, where a chain has maybe a corporate office or people that get paid to do this for a living. An independent restaurant doesn't have any of the support. So that's really where we look at the value that we can provide.
Yeah, that's going to be a good service, I think, to the industry, because you're dead on there in terms of independent restaurants, especially the operators. They typically don't have, a roster, especially now when you look at the amount of layoffs that have occurred just to deal with, kind of the pandemic repositioning. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about kind of what I think always is the 800-pound elephant in the room, and that is third-party delivery and being able to deal with those marketplaces, which in the past have been kind of the holy grail to an operator, being able to have some marketing. People call it delivery. I call Uber Eats as a marketing vehicle, to get your product out there. What and how far do you guys go in that direction in terms of actually is there a marketplace for this, or is this something where you just align up with Postmates, Uber Eats, and the likes to get the products out there?
So I think first off, it's about education. And again, the restaurant operations consultants and the food fanatic chefs will look at and understand what are the pros and cons of each of the solutions. And the knock against the third parties is they're a costly solution. The benefit is their instant marketing, their traffic, they're getting your brand out there. So what we would advise is really understand, kind of how to use them properly. But don't just kind of turn them on and let them run, because then it can end up as one of the most significant lines on your P&L.
Yeah. Any plans to try to maybe put together a consortium of sort, go to Uber and say, listen, we've got a few thousand independent operators that we've created in terms of a platform. Can you give us a group deal, almost like a buying group, where we can get, because that's where independent operators really kind of lose out as opposed to chains.
So that's what Adam's responsible for, our Check Business Tools program, which has a bunch of great partnerships, with Chow Now around online ordering, or Bento Box around setting up websites, or Toast around point of sale systems. I think the delivery piece is really the most challenging aspect of it, because there's a real cost there. What we do is work with the folks to figure out what their best solution is. That's the short of it.
Interesting. All right. So this seems, and you wanted to add something there, Adam?
I was just going to say, they're not going away. They're definitely part of the landscape. And one of the things we very consciously did on the onset was, if we're going to sit down and talk to an operator about profitability, we're going to include that delivery cost. So we've got it built into there to one of the tools that we use with the operators when the rocks sit down. So we're absolutely making that part of the conversation so that they do understand. And Jim said it earlier, there's a great customer acquisition piece and discovery piece there that they offer that shouldn't be overlooked if you're standing up a new brand, but you do have to understand the math and the profitability behind it to be successful.
Yeah. Have you guys considered, or are you currently taking in operators that, hey, listen, I've got a unit over here, I'm almost at capacity, but I'm thinking I want to run a ghost restaurant. I've got some access to some flex space over here. I've got access to equipment, things like that, but it's not a brand today. Would you take a concept like that as pretty much essentially a startup and run with it, kind of build a program for them?
I would say if they're a restaurateur, Jim said at the beginning, our focus is to support restaurateurs and operators. And so anybody trying to stand up, whether it be a commissary or a food truck or wherever they're looking to do business, if they have excess space, we absolutely want to work with them. And we've seen independent operators be very creative. And, some of the early successes we've seen a customer in Minnesota who's a restaurant was shut down, but the kitchen was still operating. So to your point, they had all this excess kitchen capacity, and they actually stood up a couple different ghost kitchens out of the back of that restaurant and are still operating on a carry-out basis. So we have, we definitely want to support restaurateurs and operators, and I think that, all shapes and sizes.
You guys have put a lot of research into this. Obviously US Foods, a major company within the industry, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of customers out there. When you look at the category of ghost and virtual brands, a lot of restaurants that are starting to kind of, they've kind of, the curtain's been pulled back. They've figured that takeout is a big part of the business today, much more so than it was just 12 months ago. I'm curious, when you look at kind of the consumer trends that are happening today, do you feel like this is something that's going to stick around for a while and be kind of just a new normal, and this is the model that restaurants need to adapt to for the future?
So I think there was research back in February that 75% of operators thought that off-premise dining was going to be their biggest opportunity for growth. So pre-COVID, if you
Yeah.
look at, I think it was MPD, 19% of full-serve restaurants had off-premise options back in February, and I think it was 55 in June. The trend's been coming. This just accelerated it. I think the
For
phrase
sure.
"ghost kitchen" really is creating a lot of buzz around it, but underneath the covers, it's takeout and delivery. It's what we've been talking about in the industry for many years. I think now it's taken hold, and I think that there's always going to be restaurants and the social impact that they provide and the excitement and the energy. But I think that takeout and delivery are going to be here to stay, no matter what happens over the coming months and years.
Yeah. We've talked to a lot of technology companies in the last few months here on this show, and really kind of the evolution of what we're seeing in terms of contactless payment,
Yeah.
digital menu, new functions within the restaurants themselves to amp up all the way out to the curb. Really, when you look at curbside components, drive-through manipulation, new store design, all those kind of things. And I think all those are great, but at the end of the day, it does fall down to how many orders can I get in? How's my marketing going to really kind of get me out there? If you look at that particular challenge as probably being the number one challenge of a ghost or virtual brand out there, is just brand awareness.
Right.
And you look at third party and what's happening in that that ecosystem. Do you see down the road potentially the ability for self-delivery logistics companies to come in and start to make a play for companies like this, to where delivery isn't necessarily 20 to 25% of my ticket any longer? Now I've got a much better price point, so I can spend more dollars on digital marketing. Is that something you've seen coming down the pipeline?
So I think delivery is probably one of the toughest nuts to crack. I think the reality that operators have really discovered, especially on the independent side, lots of people got into the restaurant world because they love the culinary aspect or the service or the social aspect of it, and they've realized over the last 7 months that they're running a business. And navigating a CARES Act and the FFCRA and kind of the new P&L is really challenging. So I think looking at what are those areas that you might not have paid as close of attention to on your line item P&L before. Now you're going to be looking at those with a lot more scrutiny, and you're going to be looking for options on how you can get the most efficiency. And I think delivery is probably one of those challenges. There's obviously insurance challenges and difficulties trying to do it yourself. There's cost challenges trying to do it with a third party. That's a piece where we're going to continue to see all kinds of expansion and innovation in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. I think that market is ripe for some disruption right now, especially just because of the cost relationship and the fact that companies like Uber Eats, Postmates, et cetera, I mean, they're not necessarily making a profit. So at some point down the road, they're going to have to implement some sort of tactic that enables them to make a profit. And if you do that, then it obviously is going to raise rates or charge other services out there, to the restaurant operator, which, as you and I know, that's going to be a tough one to crack in the coming years, especially as we recover for the industry. When you guys look at the number one, let's say one or two top challenges, you get a chance to talk to a lot of operators today. What are you finding out in the field where the operators are saying, is it labor? Is it, hey, listen, I've got to figure out a way to get guests back in? What are some of the big challenges you guys have uncovered here as our last question?
I would start and say that staffing still remains and labor still remains the number one challenge. It's been a challenge in the industry for a while, and I think this just compounded it to some degree. So we're trying to be very thoughtful about how we approach solutions to staffing and helping solve that labor piece. And just as we talk about ghost kitchens and executing a new brand, we try to keep it simple. We look at what are you already doing and how can you expand it with the staff that you've got. You certainly don't want to bring on a bunch of or attempt to bring on a bunch of staff just to execute a ghost kitchen. But in a lot of cases, the staff is just not out there to be found right now. And so for me, Staffing, and from what I've heard from a lot of operators, staffing still remains the number one challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
So
cool.
I think what I would just maybe weigh on, so I agree with staffing. I think that new P&L and understand the new economics as kind of the lines shift, as the revenue changes, as third party comes in there. Like there's all these different kind of factors at play in the P&L. So understanding how to make a restaurant profitable when you've tripled your off-premise dining and you're at 50% capacity, understanding that. I mean, at the best of times, the average independent restaurant makes 4 cents of every dollar. So once you start looking at the challenges that they've got, and as the mix shifts, it becomes a really, really difficult business proposition. So I think that's the other big challenge that we really focus on helping them with.
Yeah, and unit economics have started to shift dramatically, obviously with real estate taking somewhat of a back seat because of the limitation on what you can put into your restaurant. And then also accessibility. I mean, markets in major cities have started to take a hit. We've seen a lot of movement here, so it looks like there's going to be kind of a new map or landscape, should I say, of where the restaurant industry might be going in the next few years. It's going to be interesting, very interesting to watch. So it's been great having both of you on the show today. I've got, again, Mr. Jim Osborne and Adam Stinn right here from US Foods. Great to have you.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. So all of you tuning in right now, maybe you're listening over on Spotify or over on iTunes, make sure and drop us a rating. That's how we get great feedback from our audience. And it's also the way I understand a little bit more what you're looking for us to cover here on the Barron Report. And I do get a ton of traffic over on Twitter. You can reach me there at Paul Barron. Feel free to DM me if you have maybe a topic that you want explored right here on the show. And if not, just shoot us an email to producer@foodabletv.com. You can always reach us that way. We'll catch you next time right here on the Barron Report.